Energy healing is the process of focusing attention intelligently in order to promote specific effects at both subtle and gross, or at abstract and dense physical level of creation. Awareness or attention is the flow of that immutable being. It is the flow of that silent source of creation. So when it goes on anything, it activates its own nature, which is wholeness, totality, completeness, ideal functioning. So that's the main principle. We focus our attention. But the tricky bit is, how do we focus our attention and where do we focus our attention? Because if there's a symptom, then the question is, well, do we focus our attention on the symptom? Almost always, the symptom is a physical manifestation that's sort of bubbled up to the surface as a byproduct of something that's underneath. So it makes sense to go to the seed or the cause of that physical symptom. So that's really what we're doing in energy healing, is we're learning how to focus our attention in a really intelligent manner. And of course, all of you have the ability to focus your attention, because we've been doing it even since before we could talk, or before we knew anything about this world. We were already focusing. We focus our attention differently in different parts of the body. So there's a great big Mahamarma in the head. It's a big sort of energy center. Think of it as bigger than a chakra. And it's completely designed to go out to the relative material level of creation. So the whole relative material level creation, we're processing through this area. All of our senses of perception, all but like sense of touch is everywhere, right? But hearing, sight, smell, taste, it's all up in the head. So the senses of perception are designed to extract information from the relative field. And then those are connected to cortices in the brain, which are designed to process that information. And finally, it all kind of comes together. It varies with the homunculus, and the prefrontal cortex does analysis and synthesis on that information. So this whole area is oriented towards the relative field. That's called I think it's called the Shodhana Mahamarma. Then there's the Basti Mahamarma. That's the one in the gut. And the Basti Mahamarma is designed to go the other direction. And if we think about, couple things, all the neural connections that are in the gut, like almost as many as there are in the brain. So it's almost like a second brain, right? There's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of processing that goes on there, but no verbal center. So we don't talk from our gut. That's up here. But think about what happens in the gut. We process food, right? The food comes in here because it's coming from the environment, and we break it to smaller pieces and smaller pieces and smaller pieces and smaller pieces. And eventually, when we get to the gut, we break it down to pieces so small that it basically can be turned back into our body. So there's a kind of a transition that takes place there, where this relative material level of creation becomes intimate. It becomes so refined, broken into such small pieces, that it becomes ourself. So the orientation of the gut is more of an inward orientation. We can see it by how we process food, but it's also the inward orientation based on the nature of the energy in that area. This is important because we're looking inwardly in tonight's webinar. We're looking at subtle realms and dimensions and so forth. So it's important to get that part of the physiology online. The heart, the beautiful heart, the Hridaya Mahamarma, is the balancer between these two areas. And it's also kind of like a liaison, because the heart speaks the language of feeling. And the language of feeling sits in the junction between all the kind of relative experiences we have and the inner experience of being. So the language of feeling kind of knits those two together, because all this relative field can be interpreted in the context of its energy frequency or its feeling level. different things. Like this picture, it's like really soft, right? It's really sweet. It's a relative thing, but there's a feeling to it too. It's very refined and very delicate. You'll have to come look later. All they can see is green. Anyway, which is also beautiful in its own way, right? It's got its own feel to it. So looking in at the 3 Mahamarmas of everybody in the session, looking into the Mahamarmas, everybody. It's so nice to just, it's such a privilege and honor to connect with everybody. Thank you. And all I'm doing is just shining the light of my awareness to help you shine the light of your awareness on those areas. And we'll just watch the coordination that takes place as we shine the light. What happens is the inner communication, the balance is created. Our tendency as Westerners particularly is to sort of orient all our awareness out through this Mahamarma. There's a lot more sort of emphasis on it. So we're kind of, there's a balancing taking place. And I'm just reporting what I'm seeing at this point. So there's a balancing taking place, and this energy of reverence or honoring is going to the heart and the gut Mahamarmas. I'm just looking and feeling and supporting the release of a lot of feelings of fear and uncertainty that tend to sit in the heart and gut area because we don't have a lot of words for it, because it tends to be a taboo area, the whole gut, like we don't talk about bowel movements and things like that. So generally in public, like now, we don't do that. So, right? So there's a certain natural, going back many generations of like habits of thinking and responding to the information that we receive from these heart and basti, the Hridaya and basti Mahamarmas, to be kind of like secondary or put aside or not paying attention to it. Also diversions and digressions, even procrastination. So all those energies are being lit up when we put our attention on those areas. And as they light up, whatever aspects of them are unbalanced or not useful for tonight's healing and for all of our physiologies in the long term, for long-term health, it just dissolves away. It dissolves, it dissolves, it dissolves. So that's what's happening. And that's nice because that lightens up the physiology a lot. There's a lot of excess stuff. We don't need all the excess, right? And that's happening for ancestors too. Going back for most people, 5 generations. So sweet. Whenever we do this work for the ancestors are so grateful. And that feeling of reverence that we entered into this healing with, it gets magnified with the gratitude and the sweetness and the love, particularly those which are not in the body at this time. They're seeing it from a really broad perspective and understanding the significance and the importance of restructuring your DNA so that your body is just healthier. And there's a nice coordination and a nice understanding between the mind, conscious thinking, and the body. And that's basic for healing, right? The principle of this energy healing process that we're doing this webinar is to empower you to do your own energy healing. That's the idea, is that we all become self-sufficient. Because Dorothy can't meet with everybody. And, and besides, I would rather be a coach to you and support your ability to become incredible and masterful and fantastic and exceed my abilities than I would to be somehow the big authority. So I love you. All right. So that's the healing for the Mahamarmas.